In these perilous times, see from current events how biblical prophecy is coming to pass in front of our eyes. You're watching In the Last Days, the program that looks at Israel and the end times with teaching from a Hebraic perspective. With Martin and Natalie Blackham, thank you to our friends and partners who make this program possible. Now, here's Martin and Natalie.
Shalom, dear friends. It's just a great day again to be with you. And my name is Natalie Blackham, and today I have Naomi Tsur, which is the Deputy Mayor of the City of Jerusalem. Naomi, thank you for coming today. This is wonderful to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me.
And this is great to be able to speak about the City of Jerusalem. So Naomi immigrated in 1966 here in Jerusalem, making Jerusalem her home. She has four children. She has 9 grandchildren, and Naomi is doing an amazing work in the city of Jerusalem, and she's going to speak to us now about it.
Yes, well, of course, it was a very special moment in my life when I decided to come on Aliyah, to immigrate to Israel and make my home in Jerusalem. I did it on the last day of school in the 6th form, the day after what we then called A-levels were finished, took my last exam and came. And it was a turning point in my life. I, of course, arrived in a city which was the city of Jerusalem before the Six-Day War. Jerusalem before the Six-Day War was very small, very compact. Jews did not have access at that time to pray at the Western Wall. And I already began to realize how important this issue of freedom of access in the public domain to places of worship is. Even as a student at the Hebrew University, I had Christian friends who had to get special permission to go over to Jordan to be in Bethlehem for Christmas celebrations. And I was, of course, at university and celebrated with my fellow students the unification of the city of Jerusalem. And I remember on the feast of the Pentecost, Shavuot, in 1967, just after the Six-Day War, which was, as its name says, a very short war, thank goodness, and we walked down to the Western Wall in a procession of great celebration. I remember seeing the smiles and greetings on the faces of all the residents of the old city, and feeling what a wonderful moment this was, actually having access to that very holy site. I had come to Israel and registered as a student at the Hebrew University. I decided to study archaeology and classics. I wanted to learn biblical archaeology because I wanted to learn about the roots of our Jewish people and make my connection with the land at a very physical as well as the emotional and spiritual level that I had felt from childhood. So I had my early years as a student at the university, and then I began to raise my family also in Jerusalem. We have never left the city of Jerusalem throughout these years. After 1967, these tremendous changes in the city began. And I think there were a lot of mistakes made by the then municipal administration under Teddy Kollek, who began developing new neighborhoods for all the populations of the city. And I don't think urban planning was done as well as it could be. I think one of the things that is being put right now by the new transport system in the city, we have our light rail system. The first line is up and running. Of course, it hasn't got its full scope because in the north it will continue to the additional neighborhood of Neve Yaakov, which brings in another 30,000 users. And it will come right down to the Hadassah Hospital in the south, which serves all the populations of Jerusalem and is like a neighborhood in itself with about 35,000 people coming and going every day. So the positive environmental impact of that, taking cars off the road, making our city center completely pollution-free. We now have Jaffa Road with trees and birds singing and pedestrians walking around and being able to hear themselves conduct a conversation because there isn't this terrible noise and air pollution around them. Additional lines will create access to all the major neighborhoods of Jerusalem. And we must remember that in the modern city of Jerusalem, we can't talk about east and west in the way that is sometimes perceived, because a lot of the Jewish population of the city is in the northeast. A lot of the Arab population of the city is in the southwest. So east and west Jerusalem are more a matter of perception than reality. And the light rail serves all the three major populations of Jerusalem equally: the ultra-Orthodox, the Arab, largely Muslim population, and the Jewish, more pluralistic population. We have three distinct kinds of neighborhoods. And I think that there is a misconception about the implications of the light rail for Jerusalem in the European community. I'll be happy to explain it for one moment. There is a consensus in the European Union that Israel should not be doing anything beyond the original Green Line. If there is anywhere in Israel where the Green Line has no relevance for any of the citizens, it is the city of Jerusalem. Jerusalem has always been censured for not providing infrastructure in the Arab neighborhoods of the city. So a very strange thing happened. The light rail goes through Shafat and Beit Hanina and serves, and of course right on the edge of the old city, serving coming into interface with the whole system of public transport, which serves the Arab neighborhoods and works in coordination with the other transport system. And actually, there was a case of suing the light rail infrastructure people in a European court for invading the territory of Beit Hanina and Shafat. The European court sent an investigative team who interviewed the residents of Shafat and Beit Hanina, and all agreed that the light rail had upgraded their public domain, created access to different parts of the city. I think it's one of the most important things that Jerusalem has done. It has nothing to do with the future status of Jerusalem. And basically, we all realize, all of us who live here, that we are a city that must be shared but cannot really be divided, because the sewage, the garbage, the transport, the health needs, the zoo, all the things that we all do together, and all the places where we go. My husband and I always walk on Shabbat, on the Sabbath. We don't have a car, but we walk on the Sabbath, and we go to the Rose Garden, which is near our house. We see Muslim brides being photographed for their wedding day. We see ultra-Orthodox people walking. We see secular people doing a barbecue, which, according to strictly Orthodox precepts, you should not do on the Sabbath. But they're all doing it together, because in Jerusalem, and our secret weapon is the public domain of the city, which works for all the residents. And we have, of course, gained what we didn't have in 1966 when I first came. Everyone has, within the municipal boundaries of the city, complete freedom of access to all their places of worship. And that is not a thing to be taken lightly. I was at a ceremony of the Baha'i New Year, which they celebrate every year in Jerusalem. And they mark, every year they say that they continue to be grateful for the ability of the Baha'i community to celebrate its holy place in Haifa and freedom of worship wherever it goes. And they are very dear colleagues in an initiative that I have initiated at a global level, which is bringing together pilgrim cities all around the world. We have established a green pilgrimage network. It was my personal initiative. I've been asked to be the ambassador of the network, and I serve in that function all over the world. And Haifa and Jerusalem were founding members, Haifa for the Baha'i community and Jerusalem for Jews and Christians. So we can have a much bigger impact than just throwing out the idea of green pilgrimage, because 250 million people every year set out on a pilgrimage from city A to city B. Now, at the moment,
How many?
250 million conduct a spiritual pilgrimage every year. A lot of them are in India. They're on the move all the time from one city to another. But of course, Jerusalem gets about 4 million of them. 9 million visits to the Western Wall. I don't think we even have the right infrastructure yet for friendly access to the Western Wall or the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And also the way these holy sites behave, there is such tremendous burden of crowds on the holy days that it's a miracle that we all survive it. So we have to think of ways of expanding the pilgrim experience and opening up Jerusalem's natural resources as a spiritual source for Jerusalem. We must remember that the flora and fauna of Jerusalem are biblical. So when we take a valley like the Gazelle Valley in South Jerusalem, which it has been my privilege to save from real estate development, and I would point out that that campaign to save the Gazelle Valley was perceived as a very green campaign, the green camp fighting the real estate camp. It's turned out quite differently, because we have a 60-acre area which could have been prime real estate. But in fact, now we see the dense and intensive development of about 6 neighborhoods all around it, and people want to buy and develop and come and live there because they're living next to it's Israel's, not Jerusalem's, Israel's first urban nature park. And in fact, one of the things that I have been taking the lead in, both in my previous work in the Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel and while I have been deputy mayor with the portfolio of environment and strategic planning, is bringing Jerusalem to be a leader in the World Cities Networks on the issue of biodiversity and nature in cities. It's come to be understood in the world, and this is something that many people don't know, that
you have to do a lot of thinking about all these things to be able to plan.
Well, thinking is important.
Yes,
I actually believe that
yes.
the world is a better place when people think
I
before
can
they
see.
do.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
But what people don't know, and I would like our listeners, viewers in the UK to think about it, the world is becoming an urban world. Now, this is something that is never on the news. At the beginning of the 20th century, 12% of the world lived in cities. By the end of the 21st century, 90% of the world will be living in cities. So cities are going to be more important than countries from the point of view of where everybody is and where things happen. But we want the children that grow up in these cities to have a happy and healthy childhood. So they need nature in their cities. And we always give the example of the canary in the cave. When miners went down to mine in a cave, they would take a canary and hang it up in a cage, and they knew that if the canary was in distress, there wasn't enough oxygen for them to breathe. It's the same in a city. If you have birds and nature in a city, if the birds and the gazelles are healthy, then all your residents are going to be healthy. So I have taken the initiative, not only with the Gazelle Valley, we have a wonderful corridor park on our old abandoned railway line, which is one of the projects that I have developed, and it reconnects 8 neighborhoods that were completely disconnected in the past, that are now talking and interacting with each other, and we have a network of 50 community gardens.
And
throughout Jerusalem.
I've been there, and I know how beautiful it is. And
have you walked in the railway park?
Yes.
It really has achieved a purpose.
It does something. It's like, because of the grass, because of the peace, because people are walking.
Yes.
It gives another atmosphere.
Yes. And that's what you need in a city. You need a place where there is no air pollution. So the railway park is similar to Jaffa Road in that it is free of pollution. It's a meeting place. It's a happy place. And it's a very intercultural interface. So that's what has led me, understanding the impact of these projects that I was able to achieve, serving as deputy mayor with Mayor Nir Barkat, to set out on my own, so to speak, and head a new list for our coming municipal elections.
Ometz Lev.
Ometz Lev, which is braveness of heart or courage, because Lev means heart. And I always think that for bravery you need a lot of heart. And actually the etymology of courage is cœur, which is heart. That's where courage comes from, cœur.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
And I imagine that you will not be surprised to hear that the people showing courage in the case of our new list, which is a non-partisan, no links to the Knesset, no political party, but it is a women-led party.
Good.
And we, the women of Jerusalem, have decided to take a very bold step. We are doing something that hasn't been done. Our platform is one of environmental integrity, triple bottom line, economics, helping youth at risk, helping the elderly, You could call it an upside-down agenda. Everything that's at the end of everybody else's list, we put at the top of our list. But we're taking another step that no one has taken. We are bringing in all the sectors of the city. The old and the young, the religious and the non-religious, the left and the right. We have an ultra-Orthodox lady in our list. And as we know, in the ultra-Orthodox camp, ladies are usually, they're supposed to prefer to stay out of politics. They're not required to be in the public eye. This lady says, and many other ultra-Orthodox ladies, that the ultra-Orthodox camp is changing, and I'm not surprised to hear it's women who are taking the lead in making the change. Women are leading change also in the Muslim Society of East Jerusalem. We had a wonderful young lady who wanted to be a candidate on our list. Unfortunately, the pressures not to do so come not only from her neighborhood. There are pressures from the pan-Arab world because Jerusalem is in the eye of a geopolitical storm that's not going to be solved any day soon. So we have to engage the Arab residents of Jerusalem who are unfortunately not engaged in municipal politics. Now, they are a third of our city, and they are not represented at the table in city council because, en bloc, they don't come out and vote. They don't come out and vote. It's been declared a political stand because it's, so to speak, officially recognizing, they say if they did, they would recognize the sovereignty of Israel over East Jerusalem. They now realize that that is absurd because the people who sit round the table make the decisions. And they should be making the decisions about their neighborhoods. The people that are creating the change within that population are the women within the Muslim community who are now getting more and more engaged and involved. And I've been working with them very closely, especially in the neighborhoods of the Kidron Basin. The Kidron Basin, which runs down from Jerusalem, the Holy Basin, right down to the Dead Sea. Historically, it houses about 60 ancient monasteries on the way down from Jerusalem to the Dead Sea. Some of them are in ruins. 2 or 3 of them are functioning very nicely. But there is a very tragic circumstance. Because the Palestinians would not establish a joint sewage solution with the Israelis, for the same fear, this would be recognizing sovereignty. We have 15 million cubic meters of raw sewage flowing down to the Dead Sea every day. Now, I believe that at this point, and this is the lead that I have taken, we need to take a Martin Luther King approach. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Within the framework of Jerusalem being a green pilgrim city, that Kidron Valley is the most important and significant economic opportunity for our city. Because if we didn't have sewage flowing there, if we treated the sewage and we had plenty water, we're a part of the world that doesn't have enough water. If we turned the sewage into water and the solid part of the sewage, and this is very indelicate, but it's a known fact that it can be turned into fuel. So what is a hazard could become an asset. We know that in sewage sources in Israel, we have recently had a wave of polio. So sewage is a real health risk for everybody, and we have sewage in the streets in the villages beyond the Jerusalem border, because in Jerusalem, the sewage pipe was put underground for the health and safety of the citizens. If we turn that sewage around, we have to start creating a new concept of approaching the pilgrim approach to Jerusalem from the desert. Now, that desert valley is of significance to Jews and Christians and Muslims.
Because right now there isn't very much at all over there. If you go,
I know. I see here the next step of economic development for Jerusalem. We're working on it already. We're creating models, but we're creating pilgrim models according to the concept and ideology of Green Pilgrim Jerusalem. So the Muslim residents of those neighborhoods and villages are the hosts and hostesses. Now, this could have tremendous impact because in Jerusalem we have Muslim women who are not allowed to go out to work. So we have a lack of participation in the workforce from the Muslim population. The ultra-Orthodox population, it's the men that work less. But here we could have real economic improvement if the women could have cottage industries, home hospitality, crafts, arts, cooking, culture, and we're beginning to do it. So
can you walk? Will you make a path to go?
We are making paths.
Good.
And we have done biking outings. And Nebi Musa can be a wonderful hospitality center for the Muslim world. Malsaba and Theodosius can be Christian heritage centers. There's an awful lot to be done there. That's where everyone went to meditate in the desert. That's where the kings of Israel were anointed. It's not a surprise that that's where the previous pope chose to do mass there, just below Silwan. It starts, actually, that basin starts in the Machane Yehuda market.
Okay.
And all that eastern flow is part of the Kidron basin. Because water seeks its own level, sewage seeks its own level, and sewage knows no boundaries. So Palestinian and Israeli sewage flows down very happily, and I would like it to become water that can be of benefit to everyone. The Martin Luther King inspiration, we celebrated 50 years after his famous speech. It was marked with special celebration in the United States. But Martin Luther King lived in a very difficult time, and when he made his famous speech, he didn't look out over the crowd and say, "Look, guys, I have a nightmare." He did have a nightmare. And the nightmare for us is the sewage. He instead said, "I have a dream." And I think this dream of Green Pilgrim Jerusalem is one that everyone can really tune into. It's saying we need to work together, we, the faiths and communities that are part of the city. There is another problem in the city of Jerusalem. People in the pluralistic sector sometimes find the spiritual load of the city to be very tough, and they sometimes try to alienate themselves from it and live their lives as though, this is just another city. Let's go to the supermarket, let's go and play tennis, let's go and play bridge. You can do all those things in Jerusalem, but you cannot really separate yourself from the layer upon layer of spiritual and history, because wherever you step in Jerusalem, there are many layers beneath your feet of what has happened down the centuries. It's been suffering, it's been hope, it's been redemption, it's been destruction, it's been tears and joy. I mean, if we go back to 2,000 years ago, when the Second Temple was destroyed by the Romans, that very pivotal moment, just a year before, Jerusalem was a pilgrim city hosting 500,000 pilgrims a year, which in terms of ancient times is enormous figures. If we've got 4 million now, and in the Talmud, there were special instructions for hosting pilgrims in Jerusalem. People were not allowed to take rent from people who hired rooms during the 3 special Jewish pilgrimage festivals. So pilgrimage as a concept for Jerusalem is what we bring from our past.
And they were coming from very far away.
Very far.
And they didn't have the way of traveling that we have now. So this
but
is
they
quite,
did it. They
yeah,
did
they
it.
did.
So Pilgrim Jerusalem is our past. Green Pilgrim Jerusalem is our future, because we have to take the roots that are
Very good.
in the ground from the past and the tree that is growing into the future. And that tree should be green, and that tree should be creating a dialogue among all the communities in the city. And through the platform of the Global Pilgrimage Network, we are now in a wonderful dialogue with other pilgrim cities in the world. We held the first International Jerusalem Symposium on green and accessible pilgrimage at the Jerusalem International YMCA in April of this year. And we had a wonderful attendance, the city of Santiago de Compostela, pilgrim cities from Sri Lanka, China,
Assisi?
India. Assisi is one of the founding members of the network. We held our first meeting there. A very wonderful place with the forest where Francis of Assisi used to pray and meditate, and a very special story of Francis of Assisi, because in the Basilica at Assisi, which I visited with this Green Pilgrim experience, there is a picture of St. Francis, a very special Catholic figure, who left his father's home. His father was rich. He gave his clothes to his father and left with just a sheet around him. He said, I'm leaving home to look after the poor, but in the basilica he's pointing to another picture. The picture up in the corner is the binding of Isaac. Ooh. And he is saying, so they explain, my role model is Abraham. Abraham was the ultimate pilgrim. Abraham, when God said, get up and go to the land which I will show you, he didn't have a clue where he was going, but he put his faith in God. He got up and went. And that's a pilgrimage of faith, if ever there was one, not to mention his being prepared to bind his own son and offer him up for sacrifice, which of course God wouldn't let him do. So I think in the discourse of pilgrimage, we have both practical and spiritual opportunities in a world which has changed, because a few 100 years ago, even 100 years ago, we didn't aim for inclusion in the public domain. Whoever was in charge of the public domain controlled the region of the public domain. We're in a world where we now aspire to have all our faiths living together and respecting each other. So for Green Pilgrim Jerusalem, we took the slogan, love our city. But the our stands for openness, understanding, and respect.
This is wonderful. Thank you, Naomi, for bringing us what's happening about in the city of Jerusalem. And friends, this is just amazing. The city of Jerusalem is a united city, and is becoming more and more like that, and is your city. So pray for Jerusalem. Bye-bye from now.
You've been watching In the Last Days, a TV program with Martin and Natalie Blackham, the program that looks at Israel and the end times with teaching from a Hebraic perspective. If you would like to financially support the program or find out about conferences, meetings or ministry products, then please contact us with the details on your screen. Visit our easy-to-use website at www.inthelastdays.com and register for our free e-newsletter. Get the latest news from Israel, product information, online video teaching, or watch today's TV program at a time that's convenient to you. Thank you again, friends and partners, for making this program possible.
See you same time, same station for the next program from In the Last Days.